All right, we are back here with my friend Zaid Dahhaj. We had a couple awesome conversations previously. We touched on grounding, light exposure, and today we are going to get into all things detoxification. And I think detoxification is kind of a controversial topic. I think some people understand what it means, some people don't. Some people are just like, well, you have your liver and kidneys. That's really all you need. But I want to get deeper into that because we live in a modern environment where we're just exposed to way more things. Like one stat I read is that from the 1960s to now, there's about 60,000 new chemicals in our environment, right? So people are getting chronically ill. There's a lot of things that are going on. And I think detoxification plays a big variable in health in general. So, Zaid, let's actually just start off with give me some general thoughts on detoxification. What do you mean when you say detoxification?
So I definitely agree with you in the sense that we live in a new environment with all sorts of different pollutants and toxins. In regards to how I approach detoxification, it's very simple. We can get into juice cleansing and all this like crazy stuff, even like coffee enemas and just absolutely mind blowing stuff but I really like to approach it from a simple manner. And this is basically along the lines of the philosophy that we want to set our lifestyle up in such a way that we minimize any toxicity from the external environment. So whether it comes to the water that you bathe in, the water that you drink, the quality of food you consume, how you move, I think it's very, I mean, it's not difficult when you actually think about the concepts and we talk about practical strategies. I think people just get lost in their minds about detoxification because they're just bombarded with all different types of marketing around it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100. This is the issue that I kind of want to clear up here because I think there's a lot of woo woo out there without a lot of good evidence, and then there's some intuitive things that make a lot of sense. And I think there is a big area for just general practical stuff that people could do to help with this, right? And I look at blood work, so we look at heavy metal levels, we look at a bunch of different and all of these things, and I do notice there is a lot of stuff that our kidneys and liver need support in, right? I mean, our lymphatic system helps with detoxification. There's all these biological systems, but now we're in a completely new environment. And so there has to be other ways we are supporting the system. And I assume things like nutrition and sleep, these are practical ways. But for you, what do you think is, let's start with one practical detoxification tip that anybody can do that maybe most people aren't doing that might be helpful? Is there something that comes from like the top of your head?
I mean, there are multiple things that come to my head, but I think the most important one, the one that's near and dear to my heart as an athlete, is definitely maximizing deep sleep. Of course, sleep is such an important part of our lives and just overall health. But when it comes to deep sleep, it's actually one of the only ways that we can tap into what we call the lymphatic system. So we have the lymphatic system, but we have the glymphatic system, which is just a waste management clearance system within the brain. And it is actually incredible because deep sleep is the only way to tap into that process. And it mainly has to do with the flow of cerebral spinal fluid and allowing your brain to get that fluid into all different crevices and tissues, to the point where it can clear out any toxins, most notably amyloid beta, which has been implicated in Alzheimer's, although the research has been kind of iffy recently. But that's one important thing that people can definitely
Yeah.
tap into.
You brought up a very important point. This is a natural system in our biology, essentially, that for millennia worked well. Essentially, deep sleep clears out toxins in our brain, right, through the lymphatic system, like you said. And sleep is highly correlated. Poor sleep is highly correlated with neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, right? And so definitely sleep is a form of detox. So we need to do that, and that's going to help with detoxification. What about another thing that people might not be thinking a lot about that you talk a lot about, like the water, right? Like the water we drink is also something, because we think about tap. I used to drink tap water when I was young because I was told that we have nothing to worry about with tap water. That tap water is tested. Now we see these things that happen in like Flint, Michigan. We see pictures of what our pipes might look like. We worry about things like lead exposure. So now I don't quite trust tap water. Some of us have filters. I think you like Mountain Valley spring water, but does everybody really need to be drinking like this high-end spring water? Is there a fine balance there that we could find?
So just before we get into that, I want to mention, when I mention deep sleep, people think, oh, you just go to bed. I think it's important for people to really to tap into the 10 p.m. to around 2 a.m. time frame for sleep, because that's actually when your body prioritizes deep sleep. So I just wanted to mention that prior.
Actually, just yeah, before we get into the water, actually, you brought up a really important point, and this comes back to circadian biology, that there are certain times when that different cycles happen. So deep sleep does happen during the time that you said. REM sleep, where neurotransmitters, I think, are often regenerating, happens later in the morning, like maybe between 2 and 5. But very important point there: when we sleep and when we're getting this sleep has an effect on these systems.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big topic that people need to understand. But in regards to the water topic, yeah, I'm obviously a big fan of spring water. I think it's the water we evolved to consume. And when you look at municipal systems today, we have a lot of big problems. Of course, we can point to Flint, Michigan. I think that's more of an extreme circumstance. Certainly terrible, nonetheless. But I think a lot of people have this inherent belief that the tap water that they're consuming in their local municipal, I don't even know how to say that word. Sorry.
Municipal. You're gonna make me mess up saying it now.
Let's just say in their local city.
Municipalities. There we go.
I think people have this inherent belief that it's somehow safe for them. But when they actually dig into the research, when you go into the EWG or EGW, whatever that's called, you'll find a long list of potentially cancerous and confirmed carcinogenic chemicals. So this is a huge problem. We're talking about atrazine. We're talking about the heavy metals that are coming from the pipes that this water is run through. And I think that poses a particularly nasty problem, especially when you get into territory like heating tap water. So that also gets into the whole bathing discussion.
So let's go into that, because some of us might be having filters on our water. Some of us use Brita filter, some of us buy spring water. I bought a shower filter recently earlier this year, which that kind of makes sense to me that you would want to filter the water that's coming in and hitting your skin. But what are we talking here? What is the risk of just having, which is 99% of people are just having showers normally? What is the risk here?
Yeah. So most people take hot showers. The really nasty thing is that when you heat tap water, first of all, they treat the tap water with chlorine. They treat the tap water with other disinfectants to quote unquote make it healthier. But when you actually heat that tap water, it creates compounds known as trihalomethanes. And these are confirmed carcinogenic chemicals. I mean, they're definitely implicated with cancer and all different other sorts of disease models. But when you're actually taking that shower, first of all, you're absorbing all that stuff through your skin. And the skin absorbs around 60 to 70% of what you put onto it. But even worse, you're absorbing it through your lungs. So you're getting it into the alveoli, the little air sacs within your lungs. And I just find that absolutely insane, because the moment I found that out, I was just like, wow, everyone is getting a daily dose of toxicity through something so basic as taking a morning or evening shower.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, like, how significant? I mean, because we want to also try and think about what this might be causing, and we talked about this before. Sometimes it's hard to separate the signal from the noise. So it could be that this is not optimal whatsoever. It could be that you are doing certain things to your body. But are you aware of any research actually implicating any health outcomes to this? And just to give you an example, because our bodies are capable of a lot, right? Meaning, like, you could have someone who smokes cigarettes, like 3 packs a day for decades, and our body can heal from that even to some degree. It's not going to be optimal. It's not going to be good, but it tells you the power of our bodies. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, like, on the list of things to be done, like, how bad is having heated up tap water?
It's a great question. And I think when it comes to any sort of toxicity that you're exposed to, we have to look at the duration and the dosage. So in regards to the research, I think there's a lot out there. I can't really point to any specific things off the top of my head. I can definitely link those if you'd like, but duration and dosage. So if think about how often we take a shower every single day, just to go about our daily duties. So if you think about the modern American lifestyle, and then you add on to the fact that you are exposing yourself to trihalomethanes on a daily basis, and we know that one of the most powerful ways to get a drug into your system is through the lungs, then I think we can grasp the type of risk that we're exposing ourselves to. And it's not necessarily the idea that you're going to inherently develop cancer if you're just taking a shower from a normal municipal system. But when you stack all these things together, then that's extremely problematic. And in regards to trihalomethanes, I mean, we have a lot of research on that stuff specifically.
You bring up an excellent point. I always, when I work with clients, we're always examining behaviors that they do every day, right? It's not the random thing that you do every now and then that matters. It's the stuff that you're doing every single day that we want to make sure that we're optimizing for, like the mattress we sleep in, whatever that is, right? And so you make up a good point. Everybody takes a shower. It is worth making sure that you are bathing in quality water without a lot of contaminants. And I think it's worthwhile. Do you use a shower filter then? Is there something that you recommend shower filter wise?
Yeah, I use one religiously. I've used a shower filter for about 3 to 5 years now. Is there a specific? I think it's called the Dual K 200 shower filter. There are a lot of
Mm.
that say they market that they actually filter out a lot of these things. But like a great example is most filters will filter out chlorine, but they won't filter out something called chloramine,
Hmm.
is an entirely different chemical compound that's problematic. So I think the Dual K 200, I believe is what it's called, but that's a great example of a shower filter that actually works.
What about like water? What about drinking water filters? Some people, like I said, I think you like Mountain Valley spring water. I can drink that every now and then. But is there a type of water filter system that is optimal? You think?
I think in the grand scheme of things, a reverse osmosis system is going to be the best one to choose because you have the countertop Brita systems. I don't think those are particularly powerful. They filter out some things, but they're not comprehensive in their approach. A reverse osmosis is generally a good idea just to put under the countertop. And then the most important thing is once you get that water, it's important to note that RO filters absolutely everything. So it filters the bad, but it also filters the good. So this is why I recommend adding some remineralization to that, and then structuring the water along the lines of the philosophy of how spring water is made. And then just as long as you structure, and then you most importantly remineralize with like a trace mineral drop, that's the most important thing in my mind.
Mhm. Because you're filtering out everything. Obviously, water comes with a lot of good stuff in it, and we want to ensure that we are getting the good stuff back, right? Okay, so we've covered sleep is one major detoxification process in our body. So make sure people are getting optimal sleep. Make sure they're hydrating with good quality water and even the water that they're exposed to. What is another missing component in detoxification? I hear a lot about activated charcoal. Okay, so this, I mean, the idea of popping charcoal doesn't seem very appealing, but I think the idea is that it binds agents in your blood. But can you expand on that?
Yeah, activated charcoal is definitely on my list of timeless detoxification supplements, and it's only a small list. So if you look at how it operates, it actually uses something called adsorption. So we have absorption, which most people know of, but adsorption is mainly the process through which um, a chemical or substance is attracted to a particular, um, let's say, modality. So in this case, activated charcoal. And it essentially binds to, let's say, mercury or some other chemical compound and shuttles it out of the body. So it's a very safe and effective method to, remove any toxicity and just contribute to detoxification. But another one that actually people don't think about is, and it actually uses adsorption as well, is melanin. So melanin is actually a heavy metal sink from the research that I found. And that's particularly interesting because if we're thinking about really timeless ways of detoxification based off of evolutionary biology, getting solar exposure and building up that callus is probably one of the most important things that we can do.
So you're saying like the more tanned you are, the better you're going to detoxify?
Basically, but it's actually a double-edged sword. So melanin also has the ability to bind and accumulate drugs. And what I found is that nicotine is actually one of the most powerful, um, or one of those drugs that melanin has an affinity for. So this could possibly explain the reason why darker skinned people have lower smoking cessation rates and why they might be potentially more addicted to nicotine specifically.
Now that's fascinating, and if anything, to me, it just shows how little we understand about all these complex pathways, and it explains so much of behavior in many ways as well, potentially, right? I mean, I'm sure there's still a lot of research to be done in some of these areas, but that is a fascinating topic. What about? I think a lot of people these days, 10 years ago, we never really used to hear about clear or clean skincare products. You go into some of these stores like Sephora and all of these things, the makeup products that a lot of women use are full of all sorts of different chemicals, even moisturizers and stuff that we use these days. that I use because I have a history of atopic eczema. Like those things, I think we have to worry about more and more. They could be damaging long-term skin health. So, what is your opinion on some of the stuff that we use on our bodies now, and what should we do instead?
I think most of it is garbage, to be honest. Probably 95 to 97% of the conventional products out there are just terrible for you because they're loaded with all sorts of chemicals and hormone disruptors. I like to take a simple philosophy on this. So, in regards to anything on the skin, I'm usually a big fan of beef tallow, coconut oil. They're not going to detoxify you. That's not what I'm saying, but they're a good alternative to the other stuff out there. And in regards to the skin, I think the most important things are number one, sweating. So, either through active movement, exercise, walking, being out in hotter environments, or using an infrared or normal sauna. I think sweating
Mm-hmm.
has very strong potential, especially in regards to excreting some heavy metals like arsenic, lead, mercury. There's a limit to it, but I've seen some research that actually shows that active movement in a hotter environment, such as exercise, is actually more effective than just staying stationary within a sauna.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is interesting because thousands of years ago, our natural lifestyles were just conducive to this way of living, right? We naturally used to sweat and move and take 15,000 steps a day, and so we didn't have to worry about we weren't constantly exposed to chemicals. So maybe our kidney and liver back then was all you needed, but now it just seems the environment is completely different. The exposure levels are completely different. So we do have to go quite a bit deeper. And so good points. And one of the ways that many people go deeper is I see this as these people they do these juice cleanses. Okay, they're going to do a detox juice cleanse. Okay, 7 to 10 day detox juice cleanse. Is there any sort of evidence to back up that this is something that's effective?
I'm sure there's a little bit of evidence to show the power of like sulfur-rich vegetables and antioxidant-rich berries, but I think largely the marketing efforts have gone too far because you're talking about vegetable matter that is possibly sprayed with glyphosate, sprayed with all other sorts of toxic chemicals. And if you're thinking about most conventional products, then I think that's going to add more toxins than it's actually going to remove. So I think a lot of the marketing hype has definitely done a number on the population, but there is some
Mm-hmm.
truth. Like anything, there's a grain of truth,
Mm-hmm.
and companies just run with it.
Yeah, yeah. When I am a big fan of fasting, like multi-day fasting. I mean, I kind of some of the same principles there because you are just kind of stopping what you're regularly doing, and your body has a rejuvenative capacity during that time that's naturally going to detox from some of the things they've been accumulating. I think before, so I would assume fasting is a good detox strategy every now and then.
Probably the most powerful way to detox the body. I'm actually on hour 40 of a fast. I consciously went into
Oh,
this episode
damn.
on a fast, so forgive me if my mind is a little bit, foggy right now.
That's
But
when you're sharpest, man. All your hunting energy, all your brain energy is towards being focused right now because your ketones. Your body's telling you that you need to go out and think and hunt, right? Probably.
yeah, I feel like I'm heading toward that direction, but I'm in more of the foggy realm since I haven't done it in too long. But yeah, fasting is just a profound way to detoxify the body, and then you're activating certain compounds, certain detoxification enzymes within your body, such as glutathione. What is the other one? Superoxide dismutase. I mean, these things are extremely powerful detoxifiers for the body. So it goes to show the power of
Mm-hmm.
evolutionary biology.
Yeah. So I love that. So there's some very straightforward ways, the water environment, the sleep, fasting protocols, movement, sweating that we covered. Actually, regarding the charcoal, the activated charcoal, do you have just some general guidance on how? Because I actually sometimes take that when I am fasting because it is a binding agent, and so when I'm fasting, I think is a good time to take activated charcoal. I don't do it much, a couple times a month maybe, but any more insight into when it would be appropriate to use something like that?
I generally recommend taking activated charcoal on an empty stomach because there is some potential concern that it might bind to certain vitamins, minerals. There's definitely some concern with medications if anybody's on medication, so you want to avoid.
100%. Actually, we need to make that disclaimer because it's
Yeah,
not something. If you're taking regular medications that you need to be on, that might be an issue with activated charcoal. So just be mindful of that.
yeah. And outside of that, I would say it's actually one of the most potent longevity supplements or compounds that we know of. And I can definitely point to research on that. But Outside of that, I just mainly take it on an empty stomach. So fasting is a great way to do
On
it.
an empty, but do you take it every day, or is this something that you might want to take like a few times a week, a few times a month?
I have gone long stretches, so I'm not particularly opposed to taking it every day for certain people. But at the same time, I do believe in the philosophy that you should cycle supplements. So, take it every few days or
Mm-hmm.
weeks, take a break, and then go back onto
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay, so the last thing I want to touch on is really just around the things that we're exposed to most commonly. So in my mind, there's a few things there, right? I think when we eat a lot of fish, unfortunately, heavy metals in the fish is usually especially the big fish have mercury. That's a major thing. And then microplastics, right? It's almost unavoidable to get away from these forever plastics in our body. I think that's good. Back in the day, I used to cook on these nonstick pans and stuff like that. Who knows what sort of crazy chemicals they were using. I've had my heavy metals tested recently. I've had a lot of blood work done recently. I am all in a good range. Surprisingly, I thought it would be way worse. So another piece of advice to people, you can get these things checked. You can do a urine test and get all your heavy metals and everything checked, and that'll give you some peace of mind. We don't want to worry everybody into not into doing certain things. So get these things checked. But how do we really guard against things like heavy metals and fish? Cilantro is one thing, right? I know that could bind to certain things, but is there any other practical things that we could do to guard against these?
Generally, the recommendation that you gave to avoid all large predatory fish, those are going to contain the most amount of heavy metals, especially mercury, which is, by the way, the most potent neurotoxin that I think we know of for mankind. Staying in the guidelines of focusing on small fatty fish is generally a good idea. So sardines, mackerel, and I think people don't appreciate this point. Like, yes, there is maybe some amount of heavy metals in there, but there's also a high amount of selenium. And selenium, through research, has actually been shown to be a very effective way to detoxify those heavy metals. So it's like this counterbalance that Mother Nature has offered. And then outside of that, I would say microplastics is the really big one. So making sure to not store any food in plastic, getting your to-go cups with hot coffee is generally a really great idea. Avoid any of the plastic cups that most conventional coffee shops have. You can get into the whole
Because one of the major points is actually heating of the plastic, right? You definitely don't want hot temperature with the plastic. That makes it worse. Am I correct?
I prepared for this. I'll give you an example. So Dr. Stephen Cabral actually
Yes.
posted research, and he mentioned, and I quote, brewing a single plastic tea bag releases about 11.6 billion microplastic and 3.1 billion nanoplastic particles into the water. So that, like, even commercial tea bags that are made of plastic is a major problem. And if you think about, these tea connoisseurs, and they're consuming this stuff every single day, and it's just mainlining microplastics into your system. So huge problem.
Mm-hmm. And what do we know right now, or what do you know about what are some of the things people experience when they have too many microplastics in their system? I assume it's highly disruptive, but like, what are exactly the pathologies that might lead to?
I will, I think we don't know too much right now. I think there could be some potential concern with just chronic inflammation, heart disease, things along those lines. I like to relate it to aluminum toxicity. So we actually know that if you consume or if you take in an amount of aluminum that's more than necessary, then macrophages within the immune system will actually transport it all the way up to the brain. So there are some concerns from a systematic approach. And outside of that, I haven't really, dived into the research too deep, but it's definitely a concern.
And this is an area where your intuition could tell you a lot, right? We've seen the pictures and videos of the plastics in the ocean and like what it just destroys and like life where it is, right? It's just highly destructive. It just sits there. It's obviously going to cause disruption to biology. I think it does make sense to do what you can to limit microplastic exposure. It's one of those things where, in many ways, a lot of these things are unavoidable to some degree when we're out and about. So it's more about thinking about good strategies about the things that we're doing on a daily basis, like our own personal cookware and stuff like that. Would you agree with that statement? Like, it's really about examining those areas?
Yeah, 100%, because, there's going to be some level of toxicity because of the environment that we live in. So thinking about the water you consume, making sure you don't drink out of plastic bottles, certainly making sure you don't leave plastic bottles under the sunlight or in high heat conditions. And then storing your food, I think, is most important. Thinking about even if you're microwaving your food, certainly do not do that in any plastic. making the transition to like wood, ceramic, glass, things of that nature.
Hmm. What about something like about like a cast iron cookware, right? Because that's a lot of us cooking cast iron, but is there any risk of heavy metals exposure from that?
There is, so it depends on the segment of population. So people who have a genetic mutation that leans more towards like hemochromatosis, I think it can be problematic, just the overall buildup of iron. So I would generally stay away from iron skillets and pans for those people. I like to use stainless steel. Stainless steel. There is, you do have copper ones as well. I think in general those are a good idea. You're not going to see much leaching, but the most important thing is to stay away from nonstick pans because, I mean, there was an entire movie created called Dark Waters based off of that situation. It's just you
Mm-hmm.
got to throw that stuff
Mm-hmm.
away.
No, 100%. I think cookware, especially the nonstick cookware, could be is one of those things to just be conscious of and make sure, like you said. I think stainless steel is likely the best. I think some of these things are unavoidable, but we can hopefully get closer to that. And just one other point there, I did genetic testing. I did a very comprehensive genetic test, and it showed me that my detoxification pathways there was variability, like meaning I needed to focus more on detoxification than other people. And that makes sense. I grew up dealing with a lot of chronic issues, and I'm sure there was some genetic predisposition to dealing with that. So everybody has a different kind of threshold and set point. I think some people who go through this world, they probably can deal with anything. Other people have much lower thresholds. And so just understanding that. But if you're dealing with issues around, energy, chronic illness, a lot of different things that a lot of people in the modern world deal with, looking into detoxification, I think, is a very important aspect of optimizing biology. So
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to have this discussion, Zaid. I think obviously you could probably go endlessly deeper into this. You have a lot of amazing threads and a lot of posts on this, and I continue to learn from the stuff that you share. So I encourage anybody who does want to learn more about this, look up Zaid on X, because you're always posting about these things. So as always, man, very informative, and I'm sure we'll continue this going forward again. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun time, man.
All right. Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.
All right.